Hello and welcome to this webinar on making flexible working for you. My name's Louise Holloway and I've been an HR and training specialist for well over 20 years. Over my career, I've worked with a range of businesses of all different sizes, based both in the UK and internationally. And my passion is supporting managers and organisations in getting the most out of their most important asset, which is their people. Today, we're going to be focusing on what flexible working is and how you can introduce it into your organisation. As I said, the webinar is being recorded and it will be available on my website shortly after the session. I'm going to start by giving a presentation on the topic and then we'll answer any questions that you may have. If you do have any during the presentation, then please do put them in the chat and I'll answer them at the end. Right, let's get started. Firstly, let's go back in time. In 2014, for the first time in the UK, all employees were given the right to request flexible working after they'd been employed for 6 months. However, while the law applied to all workers, it was most generally parents and carers who asked for either flexi time or the ability to work from home, with 1 in 3 of those requests being turned down. Many managers just couldn't get away from the idea that everyone needed to be in the workplace at the same time to get the work done, despite evidence that rigid working hours and presenteeism negatively impact both employee well-being and productivity. Then COVID hit. And we were told that if it was at all possible, we had to work from home. The changes that happened in our workplaces were amazing. And the creativity that businesses showed in making it work for them was both fast and effective. As we came out of the pandemic, it seemed that flexible working was here to stay. On the whole, people liked it. A survey by the World Economic Forum in July 2021 found that 2/3 of people around the world wanted to continue to work flexibly when the COVID-19 pandemic was over, and that almost 1/3 were prepared to quit their job if the boss made them go back to the office full time. Businesses were also struggling to recruit, with many prospective candidates staying away from roles that did not include an inclusive attitude to flexibility. The workplace has continued to evolve since then, and this year the UK's government has proposed a new law to give employees the right to request flexible working from day one. Now, this is likely to further escalate the amount of flexible working requests from employees. Going forward, understanding what flexible working is, the benefits that it can provide to your employees and your organisation, and what your legal responsibilities as an employer are, is only going to become more important. So, I guess the first question is, what is flexible working? Well, when we hear the words flexible working, we tend to think of either working from home or hybrid working, so partly in the office and partly at home. But actually, it's a lot more nuanced than that. Effectively, it can be described as a work arrangement that gives employees more control over when, where, and how they work. There are many different types of flexible working arrangements, but some of the most common include flexible hours. Now, this allows employees to choose their own start and finish times within certain limitations. Then you have compressed hours. Compressed hours allow employees to work longer hours on fewer days, for example, working 10 hours a day for 4 days a week. Then we have job sharing. So this allows 2 or more people to share one full-time job. Obviously, we have hybrid working, so working from both home and the office. And then finally, remote working. And this allows employees to either work from home or another location outside of the office. As I said in the introduction, there are already legal provisions in place to allow employees to request to work flexibly. They currently have this right if you've employed them for at least 26 weeks. They're legally classed as an employee, and they've not made another flexible working request in the last 12 months. Now, as an employer, if your eligible employee does make a flexible working request, there are some steps that you need to take. Firstly, you need to ask for the request in writing. You then need to make sure that you consider the request fairly. And if you intend to turn it down, discuss that with your employee. You need to make sure that you look at all the options that are available if the request is not possible, and make a decision based on facts and not personal opinion as to whether or not you like it. And you can only turn down the request if there's a valid business reason. Now, there are 8 statutory reasons that you can turn down a request. And they are, firstly, if you think it will cost your business too much money to make the necessary changes to make it work. If you cannot reorganize the work amongst other staff. If you cannot recruit more staff to cover off a part-time position. If you believe that there will be a negative effect on the quality of the work. If you believe there will be a negative effect on your business's ability to meet customer demand. If there will be a negative effect on performance, or if there's not enough work for your employee to do at the times that they've requested to work. And finally, if there are planned changes to the business. For example, if you intend to reorganize, restructure, or change the business and think that the request will not fit in with those plans. Once you have considered all of this, you need to firstly give your employee a decision within 3 months of receiving the request. Although if you do need more time, you can extend it if the employee agrees. And you also need to be clear that if you approve your employee's request, this will usually change the terms of the employment contract, so the change will be permanent. When considering flexible working requests, it's important to make your policy inclusive and accessible for all employees, and to follow a clear process in line with the ACAS guidelines, which you can find on their website. Failure to do so can lead to grievances and ultimately tribunal claims. So, we've covered what flexible working is, but as busy business owners and managers, why should we care about it? Other than messing with our carefully planned work patterns, what's in it for us? Well, flexible working can provide great benefits for both employees and employers. Some of the benefits for employees include improved work-life balance. Working flexibly can help employees to better balance their work and their personal commitments. This can lead to reduced stress, improved mental health, and a better overall quality of life. Increased productivity. Now, studies have shown that flexible workers can be just as productive or even more productive as traditional office workers. This is because they're able to work when they are most productive and avoid distractions. Greater job satisfaction. Flexible working can give employees a greater sense of control over their work and their lives. This can lead to increased role engagement and motivation. Now, flexible working isn't for everyone. Some people love their time in the office, and working regular, normal hours suits them perfectly. They may not want to spend more time at home, or may not have a space that works for them to do it. But for some groups in particular, embracing flexible working can be a huge benefit. Let's look at some examples. Parents and caregivers. Flexible working hours can help parents and caregivers to give better balance to their work and their family commitments. This can be especially helpful for parents with young children or for those who have elderly relatives to care for. People with disabilities. Flexible working can help disabled people to participate in the workforce. This is because it can allow them to work around their specific needs, such as needing to take breaks or needing to work from home. People with long-term health conditions. Flexible working can help people with long-term conditions to stay in the workforce. This is because it can allow them to work when they are feeling well and to take breaks when they need to. Another group is people who live in rural areas. Flexible working can allow them to work from home or from another remote location. For employers, on the other hand, flexible working can lead to direct and indirect business benefits. The direct benefits include savings on office space, for example, using technology to allow remote working and hot desking. It can also allow a better match between business records and demand, for example, serving customers on a 24/7 basis. Indirect business benefits are achieved through improved employee satisfaction and well-being. Research shows that flexible workers have a higher level of job satisfaction, commitment, and are more likely to increase their discretionary effort compared to those who do not work flexibly. Flexible working can also reduce absence rates and allow employees to manage disability and long-term health conditions, as well as supporting their mental health and stress. Flexible working options can also be attractive to employees and new recruits, especially as employee expectations change regarding their jobs, careers, and work-life balance. And demographic changes affect employees' needs to balance their job with other responsibilities, such as caring. Looking specifically at hybrid working, a recent Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development, or CIPD, report says that employers are most likely to say it has brought a positive impact for attraction and retention of talent, the ability to recruit from a wider geography in the UK, the ability to recruit a more diverse workforce, and employee financial well-being. So, if it really can increase employee satisfaction and engagement, lead to higher productivity levels, reduce overhead costs, and enhance diversity and inclusion, why aren't all businesses already doing it? Well, for a lot of businesses, there are still concerns about flexible working and how it will affect their business. The concerns they feel vary, depending on the type of flexibility that's being discussed. If the flexibility is around, for example, job sharing or flexible hours, the concerns are usually around how the work will be handed over, communication between employees, and ensuring that work is covered at all times. If we're talking about hybrid or home working, then there are other concerns which are commonly raised. Productivity. So whether or not employees will work as hard at home, or whether they'll be distracted by children or domestic tasks without a manager watching over them. Employees' connection to the organisation overall. So will they still feel like they're part of the company? The ability of managers to lead remote teams effectively, and how it will impact on the overall culture of the organisation. Concerns have also been raised about how it affects employees' development and their ability to move up within the organisation. Interestingly, recent research has found that, yes, globally, people are working on average 37 minutes fewer a day than they were in January 2022. However, the same research has also shown that productivity has not been effective. What does seem to be happening, though, is that people who work from home are being more flexible with the hours that they work. For example, a recent report in The Telegraph by Richard Goodwin claimed that there had been a rise in employees taking a break from 4 till 6 p.m. and described the modern working day as a long and diffuse arc that begins with emails in bed at 7 a.m. and ends at 11:23 p.m. Goodwin suggested that this is when working parents stop work to care for their children, and those without care responsibility use the 2 hours for leisure time. However, they do return to work in the evening. This anecdotal report aligns with survey results from ActiveTrack, which also found just over a quarter of employees were logging 10-hour days plus. From these reports, it seems that employees not working their full hours at home isn't the problem. In fact, in some cases, the opposite is true. For most people, they are either managing their work around their personal lives or finding it more difficult to switch off. Of course, flexible working is not without its challenges. It does require clear communication, trust, and for remote working, the right technology. There is a myth that flexible and hybrid working is only suitable for certain industries. However, this is thinking very narrowly. Increasing access to different forms of flexibility, including different start and finish times, compressed hours, job shares, the ability to swap shifts, etc., will help all organisations offer better options to their employees, regardless of the job role or sector that they work in. The key to overcoming these challenges is buy-in from the top. Business owners and senior managers have to embrace the benefits of flexible working and be willing to work with junior managers and employees to make it work. Building a culture which trusts its employees, communicates openly with them about the challenges, and works with them to make decisions on how work is allocated is essential. To do this, managers must feel comfortable in their own abilities to manage flexible working requests and should be given appropriate training on how to manage remote employees. They should ensure that they have regular meetings with the direct reports to understand what matters to them and what challenges they are facing, what their priorities are, and how they can help. Where managers don't trust their employees, then they tend to assume that any lack of productivity is down to the employee not being in the office and that they will only perform well there. This kind of environment is not one where any employee will thrive. So it's down to the business to support the manager and the employee in understanding what's gone wrong and how it can be rectified. Another thing to think about is, if you do still have people working from home and are wanting to bring them back into the office, what is your reason for doing so? What is it that you want to achieve? If you are bringing people back to the office, like Zoom or Google have recently announced, what is the difference that you are looking to make? Is it because you want people to collaborate together, brainstorm ideas, build relationships? Or is it just that you want to see them working? Many people have to travel by car or public transport to get into work, and this costs them money. Particularly in a period where the cost of living has risen, you're going to need a good reason to happily reinstate that commute. So you've read the research, you've listened to your employees, and you want to introduce a flexible working culture into your organisation. For this to work, you need to ensure that your workplace culture embraces it. That as a business, you genuinely support and prioritise it and make it easy to request. You will also need to ensure that your culture does not stigmatise or devalue employees who do choose to work flexibly. Start by talking to both employers and employees. Talk to the leaders in your business. How do they feel about it? What sort of flexibility would they like to see? What do they think will or won't work, and why? How can this be challenged? Make sure you think about options like job sharing, flexible start and finish times, and compressed hours, as well as home or hybrid working. Thinking back to the concerns that we identified, here's some thoughts. On the question of productivity, ask yourself, are you measuring time at work or work getting done? And do the two things equate? Now, whilst in some businesses, it will be essential to have people available at set times. Customer call centres or front of house retail staff are good examples. For many others, does it really matter if someone starts an hour early or finishes off work in the evening? Some businesses are now actively encouraging their employees to add flexible working taglines to their email accounts, explaining that they work flexible hours and so may respond at different times of the day. This helps customers understand why they may get responses sent at unusual times, and also helps fellow employees not feel like they have to respond to an email sent at 11 p.m. Also, do your employees feel that they are more or less productive at home? Some reports indicate that people like working from home as they feel they have more privacy to get things done without the distractions of the office. Others do find it more difficult because of the home-based distractions. Find out what your employees want and how you can work with that. Do you need to have employees available between certain hours to meet customer needs? If so, does everyone need to be there? Is there work that can be done as effectively outside of opening hours? Or can the work be split between job sharers or done by part-time workers? Would some of your team prefer to start early and get the paperwork done, whilst others have a preference for the face-to-face 9-to-5 stuff? If you are worried about your employees' connection to the organisation overall, ask yourself, what is it that you want them to be connected with? Is it the overall strategy, or their colleagues, or the workplace culture? If you are worried, can you think of creative ways to do it virtually? Or can you agree certain days when everyone is in the office and arrange for your team meetings or co-working events to happen then? If it's the ability of your managers to lead teams effectively that's concerning you, then there is a one-word answer: training. Although flexible working has been around for a long time now, so many managers don't have the training they need to effectively manage it. Whether it's managing part-time workers or remote teams, they need to be given the skill set to make their management style effective. If it's the company culture that you're worried about, then this is where the senior leadership come in. How far they've bought into flexible working will either make or break your work culture in relationship to it. If they are bought in, then great. Shout about it from the rooftops, not only internally, but externally too. And if not, you need to find out why not. What is stopping them from embracing something that could enhance your business, save you money, and encourage some of the best candidates out there to apply to you for work? Once you have addressed these issues, you can then develop a flexible working policy and share it with your employees as part of a communications campaign designed to showcase how flexible working can benefit teams, individuals, and the company as a whole. You then need to talk to managers and their teams to find out whether they feel there's enough support on offer for them to work flexibly. Do they need help when it comes to things like job design, managing workloads? Or do they need training and coaching opportunities so that they can build trust within their teams? Do you need to invest to make sure that you have the right technology in place? Whether you are just starting on your flexible working journey, or if you already have flexible working processes in place, you will need to be aware of the upcoming changes to employment law. The new Employment Relations Flexible Working Act 2023 received royal assent on the 20th of July. And although there is not yet a set date for it to become law, it's likely to take effect in summer 2024. So, what are the main changes that will be introduced by the Act? Well, the main changes anticipated are, firstly, the right to request flexible working becoming a day one right, instead of the current 26-week employment period. Employers will need to consult about a flexible working request with their employee if they are considering rejecting it, although we've got no real detail on what this means yet. Employees will be able to make 2 requests within a 12-month period. Instead, currently, it's only one every 12 months. And employers must respond to requests within 2 months. It's currently 3. And finally, the Act will remove the current requirement for employees to set out how the effects of their flexible working request might be dealt with by the employer. And this will make it easier for employees to apply. What is not anticipated to change is the current list of 8 business reasons for refusal, nor are employees expected to be given the right to appeal a refusal, although the current ACAS code does say that refusals should be handled in a reasonable manner and employees should listen to any appeal to try and resolve the issue, and that's not likely to change. In the meantime, the current rules still apply. Regardless of the changes, employers will still need to consider the possibility of indirect discrimination claims in terms of how they decide applications, as well as considering the permitted statutory reasons for refusal. If there is a particular policy, criterion, or practice, what we call a PCP, in granting or refusing requests, which puts people who share an Equality Act protected characteristic at a particular disadvantage, for example, employees with child or other caring responsibilities, often women, or who have other protected characteristics such as disability or age, and the applicant is put at a disadvantage, they will need to be able to justify the arrangements as a proportionate means of achieving a legitimate aim, to be able to defend an indirect discrimination claim. They should consider applications from employees with disabilities fully, to make sure any unfavourable treatment arising from their medical condition, for example, refusing an application to work fewer hours or from home, can be justified as a proportionate means of achieving a legitimate aim. They should also consider whether the duty to make reasonable adjustment applies. To summarise, when implementing a new policy or updating an existing one, there are some key things for you to think about. Firstly, create a flexible working hours policy and share it with your employees. Document any flexible working terms agreed with your individual employees. Guide your staff through the process. Assess your line manager's support and find out where the problems are. Communicate any changes clearly. Measure employee performance, not their presenteeism. Listen to your people. Find out what's working and what's not and how you can improve it. Make flexible working an option rather than a necessity. As we said, it doesn't work for everyone. Advertise your flexible working policy in your job adverts and invest in the effective technology which will complement your new flexible working processes. So, what next for flexible work? As things stand, the most common type of flexible working is working from home, whether that's full or part-time. Interestingly, though, the arrangement that most people seem to want is a 4-day week. And there was a big pilot scheme run in the UK this year, thought to be the world's biggest, with 61 companies getting involved. The aim of the scheme was not to cram 5 days' work into 4, but instead for employees to work 80% of the time for 100% of the pay. The trial ran for 6 months and seems to have been very successful, with more than 90% of companies continuing the trial and 18 keeping it permanently. The majority of employers who took part in the project say they've seen productivity levels maintained and improvements in staff retention and well-being. Business revenue stayed broadly the same. There was a 65% reduction in the number of sick days, and 71% of employees reported lower levels of burnout. Feedback from employers includes that it made companies much more pragmatic and led to the canning of unproductive meetings and activities, focusing instead only on what really made a difference to the business and its customers. There were some concerns raised that it may not be suitable for all sectors, but overall, it's an exciting future concept. 4-day weeks aside, the things that many employees are also crying out for is flexibility in working hours. Now, flexibility for frontline roles is important, with 6% of employees saying that they have left a job in the last year specifically due to a lack of flexible working, and 12% having changed their careers or profession due to a lack of flexible working options within the sector. Now, this represents almost 2 million and 4 million workers respectively. And the number is increasing year on year, particularly amongst those with a disability or long-term health condition. Whether you've bought into it or not, flexible working is here to stay and is becoming a key benefit that people are looking for in a new role. When thinking about applying for a new job, 53% of job seekers say being able to have a flexible working pattern is important to them. And another 53% say the ability to work remotely is important. This is only overtaken in importance by pay and benefits. And that's it for the presentation. Thank you for attending, and I hope that this session gave you some insights into the role that flexible working can play in your organisation. I will now stop the recording and happily answer any questions that you may have.